About 25 years ago or so, 23 or 24 years ago, I had a most unusual experience. Nothing in my life was working at that point. My relationship with my significant other person was falling apart. My health was going rapidly downhill. And to make matters worse, I lost my job and I was out of work. And then on top of all of that, I had a terrible automobile accident in which I broke my neck. I had a 3/4 inch fracture. It wasn't like a hairline fracture. It was a 3/4 inch fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly, meaning that I was unable to work and unable to do really much of anything. They told me I couldn't even lift a half gallon of milk with my arm extended because my neck would not support such exertion. So I had to wear a therapeutic collar, what they call in America a Philadelphia collar, that held up my head and supported my head, because they said, you know, Neil, your head right now with your neck broken that way is like a basketball being held up by a pin. That's really what you have to understand. And the doctors told me I really should have died. You know, they tell me that 99 people out of 100 who have a broken neck, that's serious, die instantly. And the others, those who do survive, are usually paralyzed for life. And God bless it, I wasn't paralyzed, and of course I'm still alive. So I was one of the very rare people. The doctors said, this is really quite extraordinary, that you were able to, to walk away from this with only 2 years of rehabilitation. But 2 years is a long time to be in rehabilitation, and I wasn't working, I had no income. I fell through the cracks of the social welfare system, and before I knew it, I was out of money. And I had no way to raise money. I couldn't work, and I didn't want to go to my family or to my parents. My mom had passed away by that point. My father was still alive, but I had too much pride. I didn't want to call him and say, Dad, I need some help. So I didn't. I actually did something really unusual. I lived on the street. That is, I walked the pavement for a year of my life. I had nowhere to live because I couldn't afford to live anywhere. I had no money. I had no income of any kind. So I wound up asking people for money on the sidewalk. Could you spare a little change, a few coins? Could you give me $1 or $2 to get through the day? And I had no food to eat, and I had to either buy food, or even sometimes I would grab a little food out of a dumpster, out of a trash container that people threw away on picnic day in the park. So it was a very interesting way to live for a year as a street person. I'm telling you this story for a reason. I'm telling you this story because I want you to know that I understand about the challenges and problems and difficulties in life. I don't understand it theoretically. I don't understand it just conceptually. I understand it experientially. Or as we say in America, been there, done that. And I've been there and I've done that. I've been down and out about as low as you can go, having lived the great human nightmare. No place to live, no place to lay your head down, no place to sleep, sleeping on the ground, sleeping outside for a year, not just for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but for one solid year of my life. You can understand then how it came to pass that I became very angry with life itself and with what I want to call God, because I grew up in a family that had a strong belief in God. And I couldn't understand why God would let this happen to me. I was still a relatively young person, just 49 years old. I had a lot of talent, a lot of insight, a lot of wisdom, a lot of understanding, and many blessings, gifts, if I could put it that way, to give to the world. But there I was on the sidewalk, and I couldn't imagine how such a thing could happen to me. So at one point, just after this experience, when I finally found a little part-time job somewhere, and it was a job that I could do, because you can imagine with this therapeutic collar that I had on, nobody would even hire me because they didn't want to pay the insurance claim if I hurt myself again, if I re-injured myself. So I was not really a very attractive person to be hiring, but I finally found a job after being on the street for a year, a little part-time job at a small radio station as an announcer, which didn't take any exertion. I could just sit there and talk And so I got a little weekend job, Saturdays and Sundays, filling in as a weekend person at this small little radio station. But it gave me just enough money, just a tiny bit of money that I could rent a small little apartment, little tiny one-room, really apartment. But at least it was out of the weather. At least it was inside, out of the rain. And I could, had a little kitchen, and a bathroom and all the things that we hold to be important in our lives. And so I lived there for a while. But I was still very angry. And I couldn't understand how this happened to me at the middle of my life, when I should have been at the peak, of my experience at the age of 49. So, one night I woke up filled with anger. What's happening to me? How could this have happened? Not just the accident. I mean, accidents are accidents. But at the same time that I lost my relationship, at the same time that I lost my job, at the same time that I had other health problems that were very difficult for me to deal with as well, all this happening at the same moment in my life. And so I became furious, and I was very angry with God. And I woke up one night at 4:23 in the morning, and I sat down on the couch. I had this little old couch that I found at a yard sale someplace, and I put it in this little apartment, and I sat there on that couch, and I began crying out in my mind, not out loud, of course, but I was like screaming in my head, if you know what I mean. What's going on? I don't understand. I had all this potential, all this promise, and I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person. I've tried to be nice in my life. I've made a few mistakes, sure enough, but I've tried to make it better, and I've tried to be a good person. What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? I can recall calling out to God, what does it take to make life work? Tell me the rules. Give me a list. I promise I'll play. Just tell me the rules. And then I heard a voice. This is the truth. I heard a voice over my right shoulder. It was in the room. I wasn't imagining it. It was a voice that I could hear audibly in the room. And the voice said, Neil, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? Are you just getting it out? And of course I turned around, there was no one there. And I thought, oh great, that's terrific. Now not only am I angry, but now I'm losing my mind. There's nobody there. But I kind of felt a sense of peace suddenly. Almost blissful. I remember sitting there on the couch feeling so overcome with inward serenity that I just sat there for a bit, and then I found myself actually answering the question. I said, I'm talking to myself here, but I said in my mind, I am getting it out. I am venting. But if you've got answers, I'd sure like to know what they are. Give me the rules. Tell me the rule book. I'll play. Just tell me how it works. Tell me how life works. Because I'm tired after almost a half century on this planet. I'm tired of the mystery. I'm tired of not knowing. And with that, I received what I can only describe as a download. Like somebody downloaded a whole bunch of data. And I suddenly had answers to many of those questions. But the answers that I was given were so unusual, so extraordinary, so other than what I had been taught as a child about everything, that I began having questions. I began thinking to myself, how can that be true? Wait a minute, that can't be true. What about this? What about that? And I found myself asking questions. Now, on the coffee table in front of me, as it happened, was a yellow legal pad. And I picked up the yellow legal pad and I began writing my questions. And I began writing the answers that I was receiving to every question I asked, because as I asked the questions, I received the answers. All I can describe it is I heard the answer in my mind. Now, the voice was not outside of my head anymore, back here. It kind of like entered my mind. And it was like the sound of my own thoughts. You know how when I talk about the sound of your own thoughts, how your thoughts sound to yourself. It's kind of like a voiceless voice, a voice that's there but you can't hear it, the sound of your own thoughts. That's what I was hearing, except that they were not my thoughts. They were ideas and concepts and messages that were coming to me that I never thought of before, especially not in that particular way. By the end of, and I began writing it all down, of course. I was writing like crazy to make sure I didn't miss any of this because I never had an experience like this before. Now you have to understand that I never imagined anyone would ever see this. I thought this was a personal, middle-of-the-night journaling process. It didn't occur to me that someone else would ever see it. But at some point in the process, I heard in my mind, this will one day become a book. And I thought to myself, now I got you. That's not possible. And that's measurable. The nice thing about that statement was that was a measurable outcome. It was something I could put a yardstick down and measure it. Either it would happen or it would not happen. And then I could decide whether there was any veracity, whether there was any reality to what I was experiencing. Because what I was experiencing felt to me like, what could I call it? It felt like I was having a conversation with God. But there was no way to prove anything because what I was hearing was conceptual in nature. It was concepts, ideas, but nothing concrete, nothing measurable. But here was a statement. This will one day become a book that I could measure against reality. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll have my handwritten notes typed up by a stenographer somewhere. We'll send it to a couple of publishers because there's nobody in the world going to publish this stuff. Who's going to publish a manuscript from an unpublished author that no one's ever heard of who claims to be talking to God? I don't think so. So I sent it off to 4 or 5 publishers after I had many hundreds of pages of handwritten notes. I sent it off to a stenographer. She typed it up. We sent it off to a couple of publishers, not many, 4 or 5 publishers, and one of those publishers actually accepted it for publication. Can you believe that? But wait, the story gets more interesting. Not only did a publisher actually decide to publish it, they actually rushed it into print because they thought it was a very important piece of information. Not only did they rush it into print, but it actually wound up selling all over the world. It wound up selling so fast that it found its way to the New York Times bestseller list in less than 9 weeks. And it stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 2.5 years. You have to understand, in the publishing business, that makes publishing history. Non-fiction books do not stay on the New York Times bestseller list for 2.5 years. The book wound up selling millions of copies. The book wound up being translated into 37 languages. What has happened here? Except that God kept his word. I guess when God says something, she really means it. And I learned that from this experience. I was astonished, of course, when it was all happening. I called the book Conversations with God because that was my experience. My experience was that I was receiving this information from some source other than my own thoughts. And I want to repeat what I said a minute ago. I had never had thoughts like that. I never even had ideas like that. So they were coming to me from somewhere else. And I could only assume that it was from the place of wisdom and clarity that I now understand, but I didn't know it then, come from the place of wisdom and clarity that resides within all of us. The first message, the first really important message that I received from God was that God is talking to all of us all the time. I recall the exact words on page 5 of 3,000 pages of dialogue, because this wound up turning into more than one book. And on page 5 of 3,000 pages of dialogue, I was told by God, in God's voice, I talk to people all the time. I talk to all people all the time. The question is not to whom am I talking? The question is, who's listening? So I decided to continue my conversation with God after that first book was published, and other books followed, creating a whole cosmology of 9 Conversations with God books. The most recent and latest book is called Conversations with God. Book 4, Awaken the Species. Now, since that time, as you can imagine, I've been asked to speak in various places around the world, on television, on the radio, online, in online programs of many, many different kinds. I've been asked to share with the world what I understand myself to have received in my conversations with God. So I'm going to do that here for you right now. In the short time we have, we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to try to summarize some of the major points, some of the really important messages, I think the most important messages that I received in my conversations with God. And I want you to know, I want you to understand something that I say with all sincerity from the depth of my heart. I don't need you to believe. It's not required for you to believe that I actually had a conversation with God. We're all having, I want to repeat, those conversations. We're simply calling them something else. Because if we call them conversations with God, chances are we would be ridiculed by some people, or marginalized at least, or dismissed, because we live in a culture that says, no, God doesn't talk to you directly. We talk to God, we call that prayer, but God doesn't talk directly to us. If you claim that God talks directly to you, we're going to tell you that you're probably a little crazy, a little bit, strange. So that's the culture we live in. So even though most people are having conversations with God, they call it something else: inspiration, an epiphany, a moment of enlightenment, perhaps, a great idea, women's intuition, all kinds of names we give to the same experience because we don't dare call it what it is: conversations with God. Now, the reason we don't want to say conversations with God is that we think that God is out here someplace. But when we truly understand that God is not out here someplace, but that God lives inside of all of us, that a part of God lives within every single sentient being in the universe, then we realize that when we talk about conversations with God, we're really talking about accessing and interacting with the place within us where wisdom and clarity and understanding and comprehension and awareness resides. And that place exists in every single human being. God wasn't kidding when she said, I talk to everybody all the time. The question isn't, to whom am I talking? The question is, who's listening? So now, as you can imagine, I've been receiving invitations, and have been now for 20 years, more than 20 years, from people all over the world, from organizations, from churches, from individuals. Could you please come out and talk about your experience? Because you see, when several million people wind up buying your books, it's a sign that somehow or another something important has happened. And it isn't just like 2 or 3 or 2 or 300 or even 2 or 3,000 or even 2 or 300,000 people agree with you or find it interesting. The fact is, it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 15 million people who have found a level of agreement and a level of harmony with what you have brought through. So now I want to share with you some of the most important points that have come through in this material, okay? There's just a number of them, and I think you might find it interesting to see what are the most important messages of conversations with God. The first most important message of conversation with God is, we are all one. That was the very first thing that God said to me in answer to my questions. We are all one. That is, there's only one thing in the universe. Only one thing exists, and all things are part of the one thing there is. That means that there's no separation between us and what we call God or the divine, divinity itself. It's all one thing. And so I was invited to let go of and to release any thought that I might have had that, I was separate from God. I'm a little lowly human being down here. And, I did believe in God, by the way. I should tell you this. I was not an atheist, nor was I even an agnostic. I actually believed that there was a being called God, but I thought that God was, up there someplace, and that somehow my theology taught me. I was born and raised as a Roman Catholic. So as a Catholic, I believed that God threw me out of paradise, tossed me out of, in the form of Adam and Eve, and that I was born in sin, and my job was to somehow get back to God. And I didn't know how to do that. I mean, of course, the church told me how. Just obey the rules and follow the 10 Commandments. And here are the list of do's and the list of don'ts. And, if you're a good boy and you get through your life without making too many major mistakes, you'll get back to heaven. But that was the way I lived until I got to the place in my life at the age of 49 when my life fell apart. My relationship ended. My health fell apart. I lost my job. And then I had an automobile accident in which I broke my neck. So, of course, I said to God, wait a minute. Not fair. I've played by the rules, most of them. I'm not that bad of a person. Why am I being punished like this? God said, you're not being punished like this. It's not about punishment. But I will explain to you how life works, and then you'll understand not just what's happened to you, but why it's happened to you. So let's start at the beginning. God said, let's begin at the top. We are all one. There's no separation between you and that which God is. And that was the first message that I received in the Conversations with God material. I'll explain the implications of that in just a bit, but let me go to the list of the messages, and then we can talk about them in some greater detail. Yes? Message number 2, after I was told we are all one, the second message I got, there's enough. There's enough. I said, there's enough of what? God said, there's enough of everything, whatever you think you need. There's enough time. There's enough money. There's enough power. There's enough love. There's enough of really whatever you think you need in order to be perfectly happy. And I said to God, well, you'll excuse me if you don't mind my saying so. I just spent a year on the street, so it doesn't feel to me like there's enough. God said, that's because you don't know how to deal with life. You have not understood how life works. You've not understood the process by which things are made manifest, by which things materialize in your life. Once you understand that, you'll realize that you're reaching into the abundance of the universe, reaching into God's treasure chest, if I could put it that way. And there's no limit to what the gifts of God have to offer you. But you have to understand how life works. And I'm going to share with you in this conversation exactly how that works. I said, okay, fair enough. Tell me more. So God said, okay, here's the third lesson I want to give you. First lesson, we are all one. Second lesson, there's enough. Lesson number 3, there's nothing you have to do. What? What? There's nothing you have to do? God said, no. I know that you think there's a lot of things that you have to do because you were raised to think that. There's the 10 Commandments. That's your particular religion. Other religions have their own lists. Every religion has their own list of things you have to do. And these are the requirements. These are things you have to do. And even forget about religion. Outside of religion, even your civil society. I mean, human culture tells us there are things you have to do. You have to obey the laws. You have to obey the rules of your family, the traditions of your culture. There are things you have to do just to simply be accepted, much less to be successful. But here I am coming to tell you there's nothing you have to do. There are things that you will do, things that you can do, but nothing that you have to do, meaning there's nothing that you are required to do in order to experience who you really are, in order to continue to exist, in order to express yourself in your truest way. There's nothing you have to do. So what you do will be what you do out of your own choice. It'll be the result of decisions and choices that you have made, not the result of instructions that you have been given. Because I've given you one wonderful gift, God said to me, and that gift is called free choice. You can do whatever you want to do. I said, oh, yeah, of course I can. I understand. But if I don't do what you want me to do, I'm going to be in trouble. Because, you're going to judge me. If not now, you certainly judge me on Judgment Day when I die. And then you're going to either decide that I slipped by and I get to slip back into heaven, or I'm going down to the other place because I didn't do so good. And there I'll be punished with everlasting damnation. So yeah, it's nice of you to say I could do whatever I want to do, but I better watch my P's and Q's. I better be careful what I'm doing, because guess what? I could be in deep trouble. And God said, it's not like that, Neil. It's not anything like that. Let me give you the fourth important message from Conversations with God. I said, okay, what is it? I'm ready to write it down. Tell me what it is. The fourth message, I'm listening. I mean, I got the first three. We're all one. There's enough. There's nothing you have to do. What's the fourth one? God said the fourth one is, there's no such thing as right and wrong. What? There's no such thing as right and wrong? Well, no wonder you think there's nothing I have to do. There's no such thing as right and wrong. Wow. Why not pull the rug out from under everything I ever believed in my life? What are you telling me? What are you saying to me? God said, Neil, relax. Relax. You've misunderstood me from the very beginning. And not just you. When I use the word you, I don't mean just you, Neil, in the individual sense. I mean you, humanity. You in the plural sense. You humans have got me all wrong. You've misunderstood me from the very beginning. I don't need anything from you. I don't require anything of you. I don't command or demand anything. First of all, who would I demand it of? We're all one. Even if I was commanding things, I'd simply be commanding myself. And if I was going to punish anybody or condemn anybody, I would be punishing or condemning myself. Because there's nobody else. Neil, understand, there's nobody else. There's only one of us. I am you, and you are me, and we are one. You are like a wave of the ocean. I mean, the ocean is huge, and a wave is very, very small compared to the ocean. It's also very short-lived. That is, the life of a wave is what? 20 seconds? 30 seconds if it's a really big wave? 5 or 10 seconds if it's a small wave? And in the life of the ocean, which has been around for, what, hundreds of thousands of years? Nevertheless, the wave is not something other than the ocean. It's not the ocean. Of course, it's part of the ocean. And after it expresses itself, after it has its 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds of expression, it recedes back into the ocean. It's a metaphor. It's a simple metaphor that God gave me to help my human mind understand the infinite reality of one thing that expresses itself in a million, billion, cajillion individual ways throughout the course of eternity. But because God is all there is, and by the way, that was another important thing that God told me. You know what God said? I'm all there is. There's nothing else. There's nothing that I am not. Now you understand that most of the world's religions claim that there is something that God is not. If nothing else, we'll call it the devil, Satan. God is not that. So even our religions claim that there are at least two different things. There's God and there is Satan, or what you want to call, if you please, good and evil. There's this and there's that. And God said, no, actually, you made that all up. There's a reason why you made it up. I'll explain to you why there is that dichotomy, why there is the opposite. There's this and there's that. I'll explain to you in a little bit why there is, not just good and evil, but up and down, left and right, big and small, fast and slow, here and there, now and then, before and after, male and female, created he them. I'll explain all of that to you, but you're right. There are those differences, and there are those extremes at each end, hot and cold and all the rest, but it's all part of one thing. To use a simple example, again, hot and cold are all part of one thing called temperature. The single thing is called temperature. It can be either hot or cold, but it's all a particular thing called temperature expressing itself in different ways. So I began to understand, even in my little human mind, I began to get a sense of, okay, well, I could see that. God said, therefore, you need to know that I have no one to judge, no one to punish. And there's nothing that I want or need from you. How could I want anything or need anything when I am everything I could possibly want? How can I need anything when I'm everything that I could possibly need? Including not just physical stuff, not just the physical universe, the cosmos with all its wonder and glory, but I also have every emotional experience I could possibly ever need. I don't need you to give me adoration. I don't require you to give me love. I am the love that you would give me. I am that which you can't give me anything that you didn't get from me. Did you hear that? You needed to hear that. God said to me, I am everything that you would give me. It came from me. Where do you think you got it to begin with? So when I began to understand these intricate interweavings of ultimate reality, of course it shifted and changed my whole awareness, my whole consciousness around the experience that many people around the world call God. And we use other words, to mean the same thing, Yahweh, Brahman, Jehovah, whatever word it suits us to use in our particular language and culture, but we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about that essential essence that is that ineffable reality, the pure energy that we call that which is divine. And everything is made up of that energy. Everything is made up of that essence, including you and including me, and including every expression of life, physical and non-physical, both on the earth and everywhere else in the universe, everywhere else in the entire cosmos. We're talking about all the same thing. I said, okay, I get it. So there's no such thing as right and wrong. Wow, that's a tough one for me to get. I mean, how can I live that way if there's no such thing as right and wrong? God said, well, I can give you a new measure by which to make that wisdom helpful and useful and beneficial. There's no such thing as right and wrong. That is moral right and moral wrong, because you can't offend, hurt, or damage or injure God, disappoint or anger God in any way. But there is such a thing as that which works and that which does not work, given what it is you're trying to do. So it's not a matter of morality, it's a matter of functionality. It's a matter of what functions in terms of what it is you are trying to do. And God actually gave me an example. He said, supposing you're traveling west in the United States, and you're heading toward the west coast of the United States, and you get to the shoreline where the Pacific Ocean meets the land, and you want to go to Seattle. But you turn left, and you head south towards San Jose. I said, okay, supposing I did. Maybe I made that mistake. I head south towards San Jose, and of course Seattle is the other way. It's north. God said, yeah, that's right. But it's not immoral to go to San Jose. It's not a question of bad morals. Well, I don't know. Now that I think about it, San Jose probably is bad. No. Anyway, God said it's not a moral failure that you went to San Jose. It just doesn't work, given what it is you're trying to do. So that becomes your new yardstick. It's not a moral assessment. It's not a moral judgment. It's just, does it work or does it not work, given what it is you're trying to do? Oh, wow, I never thought about using that as the yardstick. I never thought about using that as the rule of thumb, if you please, about whether I should do something or not do something, make that choice or make the other choice. I never thought of life in those terms. God said, oh, we're just beginning, my son. We're just beginning of exploring the terms in which you never thought of life. This is just the beginning. And it was. Much more was given to me and shared with me by God and shared by me with millions of people around the world. And what has arisen from that dialogue is an extraordinary awareness of what's really true in life and what's really important in life. Because even as I was told all of these things, there's no such thing as right and wrong, there's nothing you have to do, there's enough, we are all one. Even as I was told this, I still didn't quite understand why my life wasn't working. I said, okay, let's pretend that all of this makes sense. By the way, it doesn't all necessarily make sense to my logical mind. And God said, shh, stop. Neil, life will never make sense to your mind. If you're trying to make life make sense to your mind, you'll never succeed, because life does not make sense to your mind. And it will not make sense to your mind, because your mind has limited data. Your mind is holding the data that it has gathered from the moments just before your birth, from that moment until just now, which is a very short period of time in the history of the universe. So if you really want life to make sense, you're going to have to access a larger data bank. You need to enlarge your database. You can't just depend on what you've picked up since you were born, since the days or weeks before your birth. That's like a flicker, a blink of an eye, less than the blink of an eye in the age of the universe. So you have to find a way to access a larger data bank. Why don't you try accessing the data of your soul? I said, wow, how do I do that? And God said, Neil, pick up your pen. You're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. Keep writing. And be clear that you are not the only one who's doing it right now. Be clear that everyone has the magic pen in their hand. That is, everyone has the ability to access the eternal data and the everlasting wisdom of the soul. It's just that most people don't believe it. And you didn't believe it either until it was happening to you. And most people don't believe it. Blessed are they who believe yet do not see. There are only a few who believe even after they see. So God said to me, we have an opportunity here. If you'd like to join me in this, you can actually share this with the rest of the world. And maybe a few of them will believe it too, because they see you as a regular person. You're not like this, a walking guru. You're not the Pope or some saint or some living icon. You're just a regular person. You're actually, at best, a broken messenger. You're a broken messenger. You're not even living or walking the truth, but you are understanding it for the first time in your life, and you're sharing it. So maybe people will hear it from you a lot faster than they would hear it from some saintly figure or from some spiritual master or from some modern guru. Maybe they'll see you as just an average guy, which is exactly what you are. Just telling everybody what you've come to understand and sharing with them the struggle that you are having as well, living up to it. That's the biggest struggle of my life. A lot of people have asked me that question over the past 25 years. What's the biggest challenge of your life? The biggest challenge of my life is living into what I've been given to share. It hasn't been easy, because these concepts are so different from what I was taught in my culture. in my society. And here's the biggest difference of all. I said to God, okay, why isn't my life working? Message number 5 of the most important messages I received in conversations with God. I said, why isn't my life working? I mean, I can't get it to work. Look where I am. I'm 49 years old. Look where I wound up after living half a century on the planet. And God said to me, sit down. You're going to need to sit down to hear this. This is very important. All right. Okay. I'm ready. What do you got? God said, Neil, the problem is very simple. I can almost hear her chuckling. She was actually chuckling about this because to God it seems so simple. She said, Neil, the problem is you think your life is about you. And your life has nothing to do with you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. Wow. That moment changed my life. Because of course I did think my life was about me. Not in a selfish way. I wasn't a terribly selfish person, but just in a practical way. I mean, there are things that I need. I need food, I need clothing, I need shelter. When I had a family, I need to be able to take care of my family, my spouse, my children, my loved ones. I also need certain other things, fulfillment, satisfaction, a little bit of happiness, health. There are a lot of things I need. So not as a selfish person, but just as a practical person. Of course there are things that I needed. And God said, no. There are nothing. None of those things are anything you need. You don't need any of those things. I've already given you everything you think you need. In fact, you are actually holding all the things you think you need inside of you right now. I said, easy for you to say. I just spent a year on the street. I'm not experiencing that. Excuse me. But I'm not experiencing that. God said, you want to know how to experience it? I can tell you how to experience it in 24 hours or less. You want to know how to experience that you have nothing that you need? I said, yeah, please, if you don't mind. I don't want to be, like a wise guy here, but yeah, if you don't mind, how about telling me? God said, it's quite simple. Give away to others what you think that you need in your own life. Whatever it might be. You need more money? Find someone else who has even less than you and give it away. You need more time? Find someone else who has less time to give than you and give them some of your time. You need more love? Find someone who has even less love than you are receiving and give them your love. Whatever it is you think you don't have enough of, food, clothing, shelter, whatever it is that you don't think you have enough of, give to somebody else. I said, wait a minute, how can I give it to somebody else if I don't have it? I don't have the experience that I have enough. God said, you have enough. And the moment that you share what little you think you have, in that moment you will experience, oh my gosh, I actually had that. I actually had enough to give to somebody else. Wow. I didn't think I had enough. And in that moment, when you give to someone else what you think you don't have enough of, you will become aware that you not only have enough for yourself, you do in fact have enough to give to somebody else. And that awareness will create an energetic signature. That is, it will tell the universe what it is you seek and choose to experience, because the universe is a Xerox machine. It just copies and sends back to you whatever you send to it in the form of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And here's a great secret that God shared with me. I know you've heard this before. I know you've heard these kinds of things from other teachers and from other messengers, but bear with me because it's always useful and helpful to hear it again. And maybe you've never heard it in quite this way. Maybe you've never heard it with quite this kind of language. God said to me, you know what, Neil? I know you think I'm talkative, I know you think I've got a lot to say, but the truth is, at the bottom line, I have only one word that's important to me. I really have kind of like a one-word vocabulary. I said, really? What's the one word? Yes. I only say yes. God only says yes. And so, Neil, you need to understand that whatever you think, whatever you say, and whatever you do will receive one response and only one response from me. Yes. So if you say, I have enough to give away to somebody else, even though I didn't think I had enough, see, because in the days I was thinking, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, I don't have enough. God said, that's right. Yes, yes, you don't have enough. You know why you don't have enough? Because you say you don't. But as soon as you demonstrate that even with what little you think you have, you can share what little you have with somebody else, suddenly you're demonstrating that you do have enough. You have enough to actually give a little bit to somebody else. God says, yes, that's also true. And suddenly you are demonstrating what it is that's true for you. That's the magic of manifestation. A wonderful spiritual teacher from a couple of millennia ago put that in a single sentence. Remember this sentence? Do unto others as you would have it done unto you. It's very simple. I've heard that since I was 5 years old. But I heard it as a moral injunction. I heard it as a spiritual instruction. But it wasn't a spiritual instruction. It wasn't a moral injunction. It was the instructions, the directions that came with the toys. It was the directions in the box. It was the mechanical understanding of life. God was telling us, look, this is how life works. It's the mechanics of life. It works like this. Here's how it works. Do unto others as you would have it done unto you. And do you know why that works? Do you know why that's so powerful that it works that way? Because what you do unto others is being done unto you, because there's only one of us. And so what you do for someone else, you automatically do for yourself. And what you fail to do for someone else, you fail to do for yourself. Neil, it's really quite simple. Wow. You know what? You know what, guys? It really is very simple. Why didn't somebody explain it to me this simply when I was 7 or 17 or 27 or 37 or 47? Why did I have to wait 50 years to understand something so simple, so easy, and so wonderful? Wow. So my life is not about me. It's about everyone whose life I touch and the way in which I touch it, because how I touch other people's lives is how life will touch me. That's why. Not because it's morally correct or spiritually elevated, because it's mechanically perfect. It's a mechanical system, guys. It's called metaphysics. It's how the energy of the universe works. You'll excuse me when I talk about things like this, because I wind up getting a little tearful at my own stuff. Now, I know to a lot of you this might seem very simplistic. I'm sure there are some of you who are listening to this now for the last few minutes and thinking to yourself, yeah, I've heard all this before. And you probably have. But I'm sharing it with you from my heart because I want you to know that if you decide to not just remember that you've heard this before, but actually apply it in your life, that is, actually step into the living of it, you can not only change your own experience, your own day-to-day outcomes, you can, in fact, be one of those people who can change the world. You can, in fact, be one of those people whose life could touch thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of other people, simply out of your desire to embrace these ideas, these notions, these thoughts, and render them functional and not simply conceptual in your life. Oh, there's more that God gave me as well. Many, many more wonderful messages and important messages. Among the most important messages are items like what I want to call what you resist persists, the law of opposites. It's another principle that God gave me in the Conversations with God dialogue. He said to me, Neil, let me help you understand something so you really can understand. If you want to talk about mechanics, if you want to talk about the metaphysics of the universe, this is really important. This is one of the most important things you could ever understand. Neil, what you resist persists. No one ever told me that either. In fact, I got to be almost 50 years old, and no one ever told me that in such simple language, in such simple, direct terms. What you resist persists. Because the energy of resistance creates resistance in the energy that's coming to you, and you've got two things resisting each other, and they can't meld, they can't become one. You don't have any opportunity to really change the conditions, because the act of resisting what it is that's coming toward you places it there even more strongly. Two resistant forces, not like magnets that push each other apart, but bring each other together, and you're in a constant struggle. So God said to me, Neil, end the struggle. Stop struggling. Step into what is coming to you, and the metaphysical mechanics of the universe will start to work in your favor. This is called the law of opposites, and you need to understand how the law of opposites works so that you can actually welcome with joy what you were trying to resist and even condemning before. What are you talking about, God? I don't understand half the stuff you're saying here. What do you mean? What's the law of opposites? God said the law of opposites is really quite simple. Here's how it works. The moment you declare yourself to be anything, the moment you embrace any notion, idea, or thought about yourself, any desire about yourself and life in general, everything unlike it, everything other than what you are calling forth will come into your life. I said, oh, that's great. Thanks. Thanks a lot. That's cool. What's good about that? I should welcome that? God said, yes, actually you should. Why? Why would I welcome the opposite of what I want to experience? God said, because unless the opposite shows up, you can't experience what you want to experience. You know what? I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. You lost me again. You lost me. You keep on losing me here. What do you... God said, Neil, relax. Here's how it works. And I'm going to give you a simple example so that you can understand it quickly and immediately. Let's use a simple example that a child, if you don't mind my saying so, can understand. Because you are one of the children of the universe. So is every other human being, and I'll explain that to you in a minute as well. But for now, let's just pretend that what you want to be, what you want to experience of yourself is that you are the light. I am the light. It's an interesting thought, by the way, because a lot of people in the so-called New Age movement have a habit of saying things like that. You know, I am the light. I'm the light of the world. Or at least I want to be. I want to be the light. I want to be the light. God says, great. You want to experience yourself as the light? No problem. We can make that happen. But guess what? You can't experience yourself as the light if the light is all there is. You can't experience yourself as the light if there's nothing else but light. Because if there's nothing else but light, you are like a candle in the sun. I mean, you're there all right, but you can't experience yourself because you are one of a million, quadrillion other candles. And so You can know that you're there, but you can't experience yourself as that which you really are. It's impossible to do that. I'm going to turn my phone off right now because I noticed that my phone was ringing while we were talking here. Let me just take the call real fast. Hello. I'm doing the best I can. Okay. Thank you, God. Okay. I'll do. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. He calls me now and then right on the phone. You know, just get these calls now and then to kind of straighten me out. He said, I want you to help people understand. So here's what she just said to me. If you want to be the light, you can't stand in the sun. Got to go find a cave someplace where it's what? Dark. And if you can't find a place where it's dark, you have to call forth the darkness. You will literally, actually call forth the darkness so that you can experience yourself as the light. And in the moment that the darkness arrives, you will understand, if you're a metaphysical master, if you're a spiritual master, you'll understand that you called forth the darkness, that the darkness is not really real. It's fictional. It's an illusion. It's just, you're like a magician who has forgotten his own tricks. Do you know that, Neil? You're like a magician who has forgotten his own tricks. You're pulling the rabbit out of the hat and you think it's real. You forgot that the rabbit is a trick. The darkness is a trick. In a sense, it's a contextual field in the physical universe that we have created in order that we might know ourselves as the opposite of that. Unless the opposite of what you decide you are appears, you can't experience it. You can't experience fast without slow. You can't experience up without down. You can't experience here without there. You can't experience male without female. You can't experience what you call good without what you call bad. You can't experience anything without its opposite number. That's why you live in the realm of physicality where things exist relative to other things. Do you see that? Wow, I said to God, nobody ever explained it to me that way before. Now that you explain it that way, I can see. God said, therefore you will actually welcome that which opposes you. The law of opposites will serve you to create a context within which you can insert your own thought and your own idea of the experience that you wish to express in this physical life. Wow, that is a really new idea. I said, I have to tell you, God, that's what I guess one of these things that people call new thought, the new age movement. God said, oh, stop it. I've been telling you this for thousands of years. You haven't been saying these kinds of things for thousands of years. Come on, God. God said, really? There was one messenger who actually said, in his own way, exactly what I'm saying to you now. He said, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you, and be a light unto the darkness. Raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. And that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. It's so simple. It's so simple. I didn't understand. Lao Tzu told us this. The Buddha told us this. You know what the Buddha said? Buddha said, if you are attacked on the side of the road and left there to die by thieves who steal everything, including the clothes you're wearing, and beat you until you're near death, even in that self-same moment, if you have one negative thought, one thought of anger toward that person, you have not followed my teachings. Oh my goodness. Buddha told us this thousands of years ago. Lao Tzu, Jesus, Confucius, and masters of all the world's great religions, male and female alike, You see, God's been talking to us all the time. It's not a question of to whom is God talking. It's a question of who listens. There's so much more to share with you. The 5 levels of truth-telling. One of the most important messages that I might have just a minute more to share with you, death does not exist. One of the single most important messages that any human being could really understand, embrace, and hold as an operational, functional truth. Death does not exist. And eternal life creates eternal peace, even in the mind of humans. When I know I have eternity to do what I came here to do, suddenly the pressure's off. I don't have to get it right the first time. I don't have to be angry at anybody else who I imagine is stopping me from getting it right. I can change my whole point of view about life when I understand that life never ends, that life goes on forever and ever and even forevermore. Gosh, I could go on with just that one subject alone for 25 or 30 or 40 minutes. I could go on with all of these subjects really for much more than I've had a chance to talk to you about here. I don't have the opportunity here, but there's so much involved in all of these extraordinary messages, the 5 levels of truth-telling, the true purpose of life, so much more that I could share with you. It's one of the reasons why I gave myself permission to create a little program, a little course in which I take much more time to explain each of the most important messages of Conversations with God. If you're interested at all, and you may not be, and that's okay. I'm not trying to sell anything here. I just want you to know what's true. Can I be real frank with you? I need to be very honest with you. I don't need to try to sell anything to you, even if I was trying to make money. Guys, I've already sold 15 million books, okay? Okay? I don't need to sell 10 more or 10,000 more. I don't need to make $5 more. It's not about that. But what I have a desire to do, not a need to do, but a desire to do, is to share with as many people as possible, as fast as I can, what we've all been given to understand about life, about God, about us, about all of it. So I have found some wonderful people who have given me the opportunity to do that. And they said, yes, we'll help you do that. We'll create this little course and we'll make it available to people. And we'll give them a chance to participate in it. Yeah, it'll cost a few dollars, because it costs money to do those things in the world in which we live right now. Maybe in another 50 or 100 years, we'll find a way to eliminate the whole economic system, which doesn't make sense to anybody, by the way. But right now, yeah, there's a little bit of a cost involved, and we'll invite you to participate in that. But if you have the interest in doing so, I think you might find it very fascinating to sit down for a few minutes and discuss every one of these wonderful topics and find out what God has had to say to us in these conversations with God. And then even turn around and share it with others whose life you touch. Because I'm here to tell you that we have reached a point in our civilization where the time has come for us to awaken the species. And there is a role for you to play in that process. A wonderful role that you can play. There's a way for you to turn your whole life into a conversation with God. Why do you think you're watching this right now? Ask yourself that question. How do you think you came to this particular message? We've been sitting together now for over an hour. Do you think this is a coincidence? An accident? That you just happen to be with me, sharing this information and having the feelings you're having as I'm sharing you with the feelings I'm having? You think this is all happening as what we call a happenstance? No. My sweet friend, you came here by appointment. You're simply keeping an appointment that was made by your soul. Now you can do with that what you wish. It's up to you. But stay out of your mind. Because if you go to your mind will tell you that none of this makes sense. And none of this can help you. And none of this can be applied to your life. You got to be out of your mind in order to get what I've been sharing with you here today. But once you make that decision to move from your mind to your soul, you will have not only kept the appointment that your soul made for you today, but you will have kept the promise that you made with your soul as well. The promise that you made when you came here to life on earth. Ah, yes, you made a promise, and you are that promise. Now keep it. Enjoy it. Love it. Be it. And you will suddenly understand what life is really all about, because you'll be demonstrating what it's all about every day, every hour, every moment. Goodbye for now. I'm sure we'll touch each other's lives again.